Today we're ranking the top 24 wide receivers in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Obviously, the draft shook this up. The rookies have made their way into these rankings with the landing spots. So let's check it out and let's see where these rookies fell especially. But let's start in the S tier here with Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb. Justin Jefferson, obviously one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and also still only 24 and a half years old. And CeeDee Lamb, who's just over 25. But when you're looking at what he was able to do last year from a production standpoint in Dynasty Fantasy Football, I mean, I don't know about you, but when I'm looking at CeeDee Lamb scoring 403 PPR points last year on 180 targets, on 12 touchdowns, on 1,750 yards. That's not bad to me. Like, I don't think that's bad. I would say it's good, probably.
It makes me want to grin in a cheesy way because it's so, like, whoa.
So, CeeDee Lamb, I mean, we've talked about this, but CeeDee Lamb put together a better season than Jamar Chase ever has. Not to mention, he put together a better fantasy season than Justin Jefferson's ever had. So, the ceiling...
And outproducing Tyreek Hill in, like, his best year ever.
Yeah, guys, these two are the two top wide receivers for us, and we're not taking Amon-Ra and Chase over them, but Amon-Ra and Chase are the next tier of guys here. So
yes, Amon-Ra and Chase, we love both of these guys. We think they're both very, very talented. Think they both get great opportunity. Amon-Ra going to be your safer floor guy. Maybe not as high of a ceiling as Jamar Chase. Not maybe, that's a fact. He has less of a high ceiling on a game-by-game basis compared to Jamar Chase just because of the nature of the offense and the amount of upside that Jamar Chase can have with Joe Burrow and less competition there overall. It just makes you know, like for best ball, you're probably still taking Jamar Chase over Amon-Ra.
Probably, yeah.
And... But we're not playing best ball. We're playing Dynasty Fantasy Football.
There you go.
And that's why both of these guys are going to be in the same tier. They're going to get the same contracts. They both have very, very insulated and safe situations. Super comfortable with both of these guys. And then you've got the B tier.
Yeah, so we debated, like, I don't think there's a world right now where we take Marvin Harrison Jr. over Chase or Amon-Ra. Just because you have the proven quarterbacks there, you have the proven situation, you have the proven production. Like,
nothing changed with the draft. Like, his value was, we already knew he was going to get good draft capital and ideally get a good landing spot, and that's what ended up happening. So,
and he did get the best landing spot in the top 5, in my opinion. Like, I mean, outside of probably LA, but even then, with Kyler in that offense,
I think Arizona's a better landing spot given the type of offense that they're going to run.
I honestly would not argue with that, like, a lot. I think that this is a best case scenario for Marvin Harrison Jr. in his rookie year. I think he could come in and produce right away. And so us ranking him as the dynasty wide receiver 5 before he even plays a game, it's risky, but it's also something that the whole community is doing, and rightfully so. It's warranted is the other word that I want to. It's definitely deserved by Marvin Harrison Jr. He's a good prospect, and I think he makes a splash in the NFL when he comes out right away. And then Puka Nacua, and we talked about this in the Cornerstone Rankings video, but Puka Nacua is a guy that I think we're a little bit higher on than consensus, but again, he just had the best rookie year ever. He had a better, who's had, in the C tier, obviously Tyreek has had a better year than Puka. But Puka's had a better year than Wilson, London, obviously Neighbors. I don't know about A.J. Brown, but it's probably close.
He ended up as wide receiver 4 on the year, right? That's higher than A.J. Brown's ever finished. It is.
So 298 versus 299. So A.J. Brown hasn't beat his best season by 1 point.
I'm talking about ever.
Ever.
Okay. Wow.
So in 2022, he had 299. So Puka Nacua just put up what would have been A.J. Brown's best season as well. I mean,
that's stupid, dude.
There's in his rookie year, and there's no reason at all not to be ranking Puka here, in our opinion. And what he did last year was special. We think he can continue to do that as well.
Yeah, and then in the C tier, this is where it gets fun because the tiers kind of expansion. They get large. We get more players here, and we're gonna have Garrett Wilson at the top of this tier, followed closely behind Drake London. This is kind of a shot call. There's a lot of people out there in the Dynasty community that are very adamant about Garrett Wilson being a tier above all of these other receivers like London, like Wilson, like A.J. Brown, Reek, Neighbors. Well, guess what? London, Neighbors, A.J. Brown, and Tyreek, we all have in the same tier as Garrett Wilson. And I'm not apologizing for it. I'm not going to make that big of a defense for it because at the end of the day, London has a better situation. Neighbors is the only wide receiver in that offense in New York. A.J. Brown is A.J. Brown. We all know what A.J. Brown does and what he's capable of. And Tyreek Hill is debatably the best wide receiver in the NFL. Yeah, he's 30. I don't care. Do you want to win your league? Do you like winning your league? Like that's I like doing that, and that's what you do when you get a Tyreek Hill. Garrett Wilson, though, it's nothing against Garrett Wilson being the same tier as these other guys or being a tier below Marvin and Puka.
Yeah.
Garrett Wilson is a very, very good wide receiver.
Garrett Wilson could be in the A tier next year.
He could absolutely be in the A tier. But at the end of the day, there are legitimate questions with his situation in New York, starting with what is Aaron Rodgers going to do? we will be 3 years removed from a good Aaron Rodgers season.
Really, yeah.
A good Aaron Rodgers season. There's some
and
major
also
questions there.
An Aaron Rodgers season where he supported a wide receiver one.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And that doesn't mean that Wilson is going to be just as good as he was the year before or the year before that, because even a 50% Aaron Rodgers is 50 times better than Zach Wilson. It's not even close, not even a question. We still expect Wilson to be productive in this offense. It's just, what is the ceiling going to be there? That's why he's in this C tier. London, obviously, what questions do we have with London at this point? He got the quarterback that we wanted. He got the volume.
He's produced at a wide receiver one level.
We expect wide receiver one levels. Malik Neighbors, we will preach this all offseason, because I'm sure there's going to be plenty of things that come out about the Giants offense and how Daniel Jones is incapable of supporting Malik Neighbors, and how Malik Neighbors will only have, this amount of yardage or receptions that he'll be able to get in that offense due to the nature of the situation. And we will say again and again and again, it doesn't matter. He's the only player in that offense, and he can play an exclusive wide receiver or exclusive slot wide receiver role if he needs to hold Daniel Jones's hand as a passer and just hog targets all day. So we're not really worried about it from a production perspective. And from a dynasty perspective, you can't be much happier because they're going to get a new quarterback at some point. A.J. Brown, he just got another extension with Philadelphia. So I'm really excited about that, really happy about it. And there's not many questions that I have about A.J. Brown long-term. Tyreek Hill, getting older, not getting any younger. It's the same thing. Again, I like winning my leagues. So
he's getting older. He's not getting any younger. He's not decreasing in age. He is becoming older with each birthday he has.
Yes.
Tyreek Hill. The D tier. Let's rock down to the D tier here. Olave is going to be at the top of this tier. And Olave, you'll notice, a lot of people I think would maybe put Olave up in the C tier with Wilson and London and those guys. Olave is a guy that, while he is the wide receiver one in his offense, it's not a very good offense to be a wide receiver one. And honestly, his situation a year from now is going to be a lot more telling for his long-term dynasty value than his situation right now, because again, the situation right now is not good, and it's not one that I think is sustainable for the New York Saints. Now, given that, again, he is the wide receiver one in his offense, I do think he has a really high ceiling. I think he has B-tier ceiling here in these wide receiver rankings, but he's going to have to produce at an ultra high level. Ultimately, we expect Chris Olave to probably be a wide receiver 2 in fantasy this year. And because of that, this is where he belongs in our wide receiver ranking. So we'll put him here with Rome Odunze, who Rome Odunze's ceiling this year is probably also wide receiver 2, just with Keenan Allen, with DJ Moore. Now, that being said, Rome Odunze, this could be a pit stop for him in terms of climbing up these rankings, because we believe that Rome Odunze has wide receiver 1 upside in the NFL. We think he could be the wide receiver 1 in Chicago as soon as next year, probably 2 years from now, most likely. But it just depends on whether, Keenan Allen is still very, very good. But if Keenan Allen's gone next year, you're telling me that you don't think second-year Rome Odunze can beat out DJ Moore for the wide receiver 1 for the most targets? I think Rome is a more talented than DJ Moore. So with that, I'm willing to bet on Rome Odunze probably increasing in value at some point. But that being said, we'll be conservative with him. A lot of people wanted to short the landing spot, but we're not shorting the landing spot as much. Brandon Ayuk as well. Brandon Ayuk is the wide receiver 1 in his offense. He has commanded as much production, as many targets as Deebo Samuel at this point. And Brandon Ayuk, the other thing with him, from a value perspective in Dynasty, is if he gets traded, you're talking about a pretty big value increase. So with Brandon Ayuk, obviously, in the past, we've been notably lower than other people on Brandon Ayuk, and we'll kind of own that, because I honestly didn't expect his value to jump up this far and stay up this far. Part of the reason being that Brandon Ayuk, really from a consistency standpoint, has yet to put together a string of 5 straight games where he was really, really good. It is always up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Yep. And part of that's being in an offense with a lot of weapons. But when you're looking at Brandon Ayuk, also his contract's up. He's 26 years old now. So we've got to be looking at Brandon Ayuk from a future perspective. What if he goes to a terrible situation? I think there is a world where he can jump up and be a B, C tier guy for the last couple of years of his career here. I also think there's a world where he goes to a bad situation and maybe, isn't used as well. That being said, for now, he's safely in this tier with guys like Devonta Smith. Devonta Smith, a wide receiver 2. He is really the highest wide receiver 2 on this list. Probably, I guess you could technically say Rome Odunze is that, but Devonta Smith is a guy that just got paid. He has a lot of contract insulation. He's playing with a good quarterback in a good offense. What should be a pretty good offense, even with Kellen Moore. Did you see that people were mad that we said something about Kellen Moore and laughed?
Yeah.
Isn't that so funny? I was defending.
It's there's just some people affiliated with the NFL or in the NFL where it's if you say anything bad, we experienced it with Fields, with Pollard, Anyone on the Cowboys, really. But
so we know Devonta Smith has wide receiver 1 upside. I wouldn't say necessarily this next season he does have wide receiver 1 upside, but that being said, over the next 3 years, I mean, he was a wide receiver 19 last year, and I think he's a wide receiver 2 the next 3 years.
Yeah.
I mean, he's that good of a talent. Devonta Smith's a legit wide receiver talent. And so when you're talking about pairing him with Odunze, Ayuk, Olave, like, I'm totally good with that. And Waddle's kind of the same thing. I mean, Jalen Waddle, we saw in his rookie season before Tyreek Hill got there, broke the rookie targets and reception record, I believe both. And then he was the wide receiver 8 last year with Tyreek Hill. Or that was 2 years ago. Now, last year is when he kind of had his down year because he played in 14 games. He only had 104 targets, so that was, even 30 less than his rookie year and 13 less than the year before where he was the wide receiver 8. Obviously, the big difference in his production being the yards year over year and also 4 less touchdowns and playing in 3 less games. So with Jalen Waddle, when Tyreek Hill leaves, is going to be the wide receiver 1 there. And I think, I don't think that's that bold, but I also think that when Tyreek Hill leaves, they're going to draft another receiver. Like, I mean, you look at how many good receivers NFL teams are rolling out there these days with the amount of talent coming out of college. Like, Jalen Waddle is a guy that I think will have a fairly capped ceiling because Tyreek will be the dominant wide receiver 1 while he's there. And even when he leaves, at that point, Jalen Waddle is going to be 27 years old when Tyreek Hill leaves. And at that point, again, they're going to have drafted another receiver. But at the end of this D tier, he's still got respectable dynasty value and dynasty ranking here in the wide receiver ranking. So,
yeah, and at the top of the F tier here, we're going to have Michael Pittman. He's been slowly falling in value a little bit. And I'm surprised due to the contract that he just got, the extension, which was very, very great for his insulation and the situation there. I mean, we just saw how Pittman was utilized last year, and I get it was with Minshew and not AR, who's a rushing quarterback, but I'm not even worried about it.
But Minshew's not better than
he's
Anthony
not
Richardson.
better than Anthony
I don't know
Richardson.
why that's the excuse.
Like that's part of the excuse why Pittman has lost value, and also Adonai Mitchell was just drafted in the 2nd round. I'm here to tell you that Pittman is going to get his 140 plus targets, no questions asked. Like, that's just the type of wide receiver that he is. He is a possession wide receiver that eats all day. He's going to get you 8+ targets a game. Like, it is not a question for me. It's not a question, and it shouldn't be a question for you. Like, he's been doing this since he entered the league.
Truth.
It's just the type of wide receiver that he is, and that's not going to change with Minshew or AR or with another wide receiver coming into the offense. The other weapons in that offense are going to have to pay the price for Pittman's production, not the other way around.
Booyah.
And the contract should tell you that. So he's going to be at the top of this tier. DJ Moore is also kind of in the same situation, where it's like, people are questioning whether DJ Moore is going to be the long-term 1. We think that it's going to be Odunze long-term. DJ Moore is still probably going to be productive because Caleb Williams is going to produce a lot or provide a lot of volume in the passing game there. I mean, they just drafted a receiver. They got DJ Moore last year, and they traded for Keenan Allen. What do you think they're going to do? They're probably going to throw the ball a lot more than we know the Chicago Bears generally do. I think they're changing the way that they do things, and they're going to be throwing the ball consistently. I think DJ Moore has solid upside this year. I mean, debatably, he has higher upside than last year with Odunze entering the offense because they have a quarterback that can actually throw the ball and progress past his first read. I'm not trying to be rude to Justin Fields. I'm just being realistic. Like, Caleb Williams is a better passer right out the gate. Not a question. Not a question. DJ Moore had to produce last year mainly from screen passes because that's all he could get.
And also, like,
I
mean, he was big, a really, really big play dependent. Like, and also big game dependent. I mean, you had that touchdown where
that huge Washington game where he scored like 60 points.
Yeah. Like, I mean, he had a couple of those games.
Yeah.
So
T. Higgins is also going to be in this tier. T. Higgins is probably one of the safest wide receivers to invest in on this list because we know if he's on the Bengals this year, he won't be on the Bengals next year. Wow. He won't be on the Bengals next year.
Next year, he won't be.
Look, T. Higgins, man, we always know that there's going to be T. Higgins truthers out there. We were not T. Higgins truthers a couple years ago, and it really paid off. We were selling him at price. Now we're in on his price because he's lost a ton of value, and he has really good value insulation because what is going to happen with T. Higgins? He's going to get paid. He's going to get paid. He's a talented NFL wide receiver, and contracts bring with it value insulation. And he could potentially be more productive in a different situation compared to Cincinnati where he's playing behind Jamar Chase. Then we got Zay Flowers at the end of this tier. Look, Zay Flowers is a wide receiver 1 in his offense, and it's not a question. There's really nothing else to say about him. Does he have a limited ceiling? Potentially, yeah. With the way that they run their offense.
What about Tez Walker, though?
But Tez Walker doesn't really scare me. Mark Andrews doesn't really affect the production of Zay Flowers, in my opinion, either.
Let's go to the G tier here. Let's talk about Nico Collins. And Nico's a guy that is one of the two wide receivers that could be the wide receiver one in CJ Stroud's offense. The other one is also in this tier in Tank Dell. So you can put these guys even back to back if you want, Luke, because you could talk about these guys and really they're the same conversation. Like they both did well at times last year. They both didn't necessarily always play with each other. They both have different skill sets that CJ Stroud likes to utilize, and they're both going to be probably hyper-productive this year. Maybe you lean more Nico this year than you do Tank. But you put Tank in this tier because Tank is a little bit younger than Nico Collins and also sooner on his deal than Nico Collins. So if Tank Dell ends up really showing out, like who knows what they'll end up doing with all these receivers in time. Not to mention, though, you added Stephon Diggs to this receiver room. So now you have Stephon Diggs in here competing for targets with Nico Collins, with Tank Dell. Both of these guys are in this tier. They're both playing with one of the most productive quarterbacks in the NFL and who was the rookie of the year last year. He was phenomenal, CJ Stroud. So we're going to put both of them in this tier along with DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf, we were talking about this recently, is one of the most stable dynasty assets in terms of his value we've ever seen. And we used to dog on DK because it used to be that DK was going third, fourth round in dynasty drafts. But now you're getting DK fifth, sixth round. And I'm like, okay, so I can get he's scoring 14 points a game. So I'll take that in the fifth round. He's going to consistently do that year over year over year. When you're talking about somebody who does that for that many years in a row, wide receiver 7, 14, 16, 21, he's just been a consistent wide receiver 2. A consistent wide receiver 2 has value in Dynasty. It's the same thing with T. Higgins. T. Higgins, when he's been healthy, has been a wide receiver 2. And so when you start valuing those guys appropriately, because when you look at it now from an analytics standpoint, consistent wide receiver 2s in Dynasty are not that rare. They're as rare as they used to be because there are about 12 of them. But what I'm saying is guys who have consistent wide receiver 2 upside in Dynasty are not that rare. I mean, how many of them did you see this year? I would say Brian Thomas has wide receiver 2 upside this year. I would say Ladd McConkey probably has late wide receiver 2 upside. Yeah. I would say somebody like Keon Coleman, if he were to develop, would have wide receiver 2 upside, right? I would go as far as saying Xavier Legette has wide receiver 2 upside. So that wide receiver 2 range, it gets really crowded. When you're looking at what separates the wide receiver 2s from wide receiver 3s and wide receiver 4s in Dynasty, there's not that big of a gap anymore. But that being said, somebody who can do this 5 years in a row like DK, he definitely has a place to be valued in Dynasty leagues. And this is where we like him. I think his price is appropriate right now. Jordan Addison, we're going to put here as well. Jordan Addison, we obviously put him on a sales video recently. I don't think Jordan Addison produces at the level he did last year. But I do think Jordan Addison is again one of those guys that could be a consistent wide receiver too. Will some of the guys come in and bump him down the list in terms of production? I think the sheer volume of guys coming in with the same amount of upside that Jordan Addison have from an NFL standpoint naturally is going to bump Jordan Addison down a little bit. But that's not a knock on Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison is a good talent. He was ready last year. We were drafting the frick out of him because we knew he'd be productive right away, and he was. Kudos to Jordan Addison, and again, he's a good asset as well as Jaden Reed here. And Jaden Reed's a guy that we're higher on than a lot of people, but at the same time, when you're looking at Jaden Reed, he was able last year to be the wide receiver 1 on an offense where I guess everybody thought that Christian Watson was going to be the wide receiver 1, which we said in a video. We're don't be surprised if Jaden Reed outproduces him. Yep. Lo and behold, he comes in 94 targets, 793 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Now, 217 PPR points as a wide receiver 1 is not that much. We know that. And so you have to see a natural step up for Jaden Reed this year. We're number one, we're betting on that. But number 2, he's in the G tier. If he was a true wide receiver 1, he'd be way higher than this. But you're getting somebody who's showing signs of being a lead wide receiver on a team really cheap. And Rashee Rice is that way as well. The reason you're getting Rashee Rice cheaper is obviously different than the reason you're getting Jaden Reed cheaper. And Jaden Reed didn't hit anybody with his car or anything. But at the same time, Rashee Rice has plummeted in value. And right now, you can get Rashee Rice pretty cheap, mid-second cheap. And when you're talking about his upside, he's a guy that just like Jaden Reed in his rookie year had a good rookie year. He was productive, and he's playing with Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, what more can he ask for with this situation?
He had more targets than Jaden Reed.
Yeah,
he also finished more yards. He was better, and you're getting him just as cheap right now. So Rashee Rice is a good value right now in Dynasty, in my opinion.
Yeah, and at the H tier here, we're going to have a chunk of a bunch of unproven assets here. Most of them rookies. Xavier Worthy. Unproven, great situation, goes to the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes. He runs a 4.21, he's speedy, and he's an underrated route runner. Now all he has to do is produce or show some sort of flashes of competency in a really good offense. Jackson Smith and Jigba, He's got to produce at a higher level this year. We want to see a step up. He showed a lot of promise last year in a crowded offense. I don't think they utilized the talent of their assets in that offense last year with that coaching regime. I think they'll do a better job of that this year, and I think that means more opportunity for Jackson Smith and Jigba, who is a very talented NFL wide receiver. Brian Thomas Jr., super fast, replacing Calvin Ridley essentially. Gabe Davis ain't going to hurt him. Gabe Davis will probably just help him be the X wide receiver there, where he could get even more opportunity than some people initially expected in an offense. And I think he's very complimentary with Christian Kirk, going to get plenty of volume with Trevor Lawrence, providing a ton of passing volume there in Jacksonville. And then Ladd McConkey, probably the least upside pick here in the H tier for sure.
Kind of high floor, low ceiling.
Look, he's the number one option for Justin Herbert in that offense. Yeah, they're going to run first, most likely, for the next couple of years. That clearly is how they're going to build their team. They took Joe Alt 5th overall over any of those wide receivers up there. And Ladd McConkey, I think, kind of fits that role as that possession wide receiver in an offense that is going to be pretty run heavy. So count on him being a very safe asset to invest in. Question his ceiling. Yeah, I think it's worth questioning his ceiling there, but that's why he's at the end of this tier.
Look, it's a fun time to be playing Dynasty because people are making trades. People are very active. It's post-rookie draft. We're actually like the next thing in line now is the season. So if you haven't already, jump over to flockfantasy.com/domain. Use code domain, choose Mother Flock tier, get a team blueprint. It's a multi-year detailed plan for your Dynasty team, including what you should be doing this summer. And it comes with one-on-one advice from Nathan and I. I mean, in Discord, you're able to message with us any time of the day and anytime. Like legit, we spend multiple times a day helping our people out and replying to people. So you get that. You get one-on-one advice. You get all the articles, rankings, trade calculator, all that. So like I said, you have to use code domain when you sign up to get access to Nathan and I and get access to the blueprint. So make sure you use code domain when you sign up. But flockfantasy.com/domain, links in the description. Appreciate you guys joining us. Thanks. We'll see you later.